Imagine you're standing in front of a massive traditional downtown skyscraper.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
You are looking up at thousands of tons of concrete, steel, and glass towering right above you.
Right.
Now, imagine realizing that all of that physical material, the grand lobby, the elevator banks, the endless rows of office windows, is actually just the physical outer shell of what is fundamentally a giant high-frequency data platform.
It completely changes how you look at a city skyline, you
Yeah, it
know?
really does.
You have to stop seeing buildings as static structures and start seeing them as physical algorithms, just constantly processing inputs and outputs.
And that perspective shift is at the absolute core of our deep dive today. We are looking at a radical transformation in global commercial real estate.
A massive shift.
We are talking about the deliberate move away from traditional bricks and mortar property management toward engineering what the industry is calling digital alpha through sheer code.
And the sources on the table today are, well, they're a fascinating stack of March 2026 reports, detailed case profiles, and comprehensive white papers.
Authored by Forbes Rutherford of Rutherford International.
Right. And it is a remarkably dense and insightful stack of intelligence.
Very dense.
Rutherford's analysis covers an enormous amount of ground. Everything from the macroeconomic headwinds battering real estate portfolios right now, all the way down to the highly specific psychological profiles of the executives who are successfully driving this digital transformation.
And our mission today is to pull all of that together for you. We're going to look at how real estate investment vehicles are completely rebuilding what they refer to as the operating system of the built environment.
It's a great term.
Furthermore, we're going to examine the executives leading this charge, a new breed of leaders dubbed quantum landlords,
Quantum landlords.
who are quite literally changing the face of global finance. Okay, let's unpack this. Where do we even begin to understand the financial reality driving this massive shift?
We really have to start with the stark reality facing the markets as of early 2026.
Right.
Rutherford's data lays out the financial context without pulling any punches. Real estate investment trusts, or REITs, are currently trading at multi-decade lows.
Which is a sobering thought when you consider the sheer volume of capital tied up in these global portfolios.
Yeah.
The public markets are severely discounting the underlying value of these assets.
They absolutely are. Specifically, the white papers highlight that most international REITs today are facing massive net asset value, or NAV discounts.
Huge discounts.
We are talking about persistent discounts of 20 to 25% across the board.
Wow.
The public market is essentially screaming that these companies are worth significantly less than the actual physical buildings sitting on their balance sheets.
And traditionally, if a real estate holding company found itself in that kind of valuation slump, the playbook was pretty straightforward.
You go to the board.
Exactly. You go to the board, you ask for a massive injection of capital, and you try to buy your way out of the hole with new prime acquisitions.
Or you fund some flashy capital-intensive renovations to justify bumping up the rent.
That was the old reliable lever to pull, yes.
But the analysis points out that we are currently operating in a stagnant global economy weighed down by permanent high interest rate headwinds.
Capital is incredibly expensive right now.
Extremely expensive. That traditional approach of just asking the board for more money simply isn't a viable option anymore. The math doesn't work.
Right, and that is exactly where these reports introduce the concept of digital alpha.
Yes.
Now, the authors make it very clear that digital alpha isn't just buying a bunch of iPads for the lobby concierge.
Right, or superficially slapping some standard off-the-shelf SaaS software onto a legacy HVAC system.
It's about generating legitimate excess returns by building a robust digital metabolism within the asset itself.
What's fascinating here is how the researchers define that term, digital metabolism.
Because they aren't talking about IT support.
No, not at all. They define it as the seamless, deep tissue integration of artificial intelligence, rigorous and proactive cyber hardening, and absolute physical power redundancy.
It's about transforming a dormant concrete box into a living, breathing, and highly secure digital entity.
Exactly.
Okay, but let me push back on that for a second, because it sounds great in theory.
Sure.
It makes total sense on paper to cyber harden an asset and build in AI. But retrofitting a legacy skyscraper with a completely new digital metabolism sounds incredibly capital-intensive up front.
It does.
How are these firms justifying that kind of massive tech spend to a board that is already hesitant to deploy expensive capital?
That is the critical hurdle, and the data provides a very clear answer. Investors, above all else, pay steep premiums for lower risk.
Risk reduction.
When you fundamentally cyber-harden an asset, you are aggressively lowering its operational risk profile. The research introduces a crucial concept here called insurability cliffs.
Insurability cliffs, what does that mean in practice?
Outdated, digitally vulnerable properties, what the reports bluntly label as digital brownfields, are increasingly facing skyrocketing insurance premiums.
Because the risk is too high.
Right. In some markets, they are becoming entirely uninsurable because the systemic risk of a digital breach or an operational failure is simply too high for underwriters to stomach.
So if a building can't be insured, it essentially becomes a toxic asset. Nobody's going to acquire an uninsurable skyscraper, no matter how good the location is.
Precisely. By avoiding that insurability cliff through rigorous digital resilience, these firms fiercely protect their net operating income. And the reports are incredibly specific on the financial metrics here.
What are the numbers?
This kind of verifiable digital resilience directly compresses cap rates by 150 to 200 basis points.
So by significantly lowering the operational risk, they are boosting the property's income-generating valuation in a massive way.
A huge way.
Compressing cap rates by up to 200 basis points is a monumental shift for a commercial portfolio.
It fundamentally rewrites the valuation of the building. The data shows that these digitally resilient assets are commanding 10 to 15% higher exit multiples during transactions.
The returns.
Furthermore, they are generating 8 to 12% total returns. To put that in perspective, the legacy organizations that are dragging their feet and failing to adapt are bleeding value, seeing only 5 to 7% total returns.
Think about it this way. Would you pay a significant premium for a car that magically diagnoses its own engine issues, defends against theft automatically, and actively fixes its own mechanical risks before you even notice a problem?
Of course you would.
That's exactly what these forward-thinking funds are doing with skyscrapers. They are engineering a massive premium by systematically coding out the risk.
But Rutherford's analysis is quick to warn that simply throwing money at technology vendors isn't the magic bullet. In fact, there is a massive organizational risk hidden in this transition.
Yes, the human element.
Right.
The white paper spent a lot of time discussing how legacy corporate structures naturally suffer from organizational model bias. If you just hand millions of dollars of sophisticated AI tools to a traditional, highly siloed management team, you don't get digital alpha. You get friction.
You get a catastrophic clash between legacy, paper-based operations and these new digital initiatives.
And you also invite the dangerous, hidden risk of algorithmic drift.
This is a fascinating phenomenon.
It is. It's where organizations become so enamored with their new tech that they become over-reliant on AI models.
These models, while powerful, often fail to account for unpredictable external shocks. Black swan events like sudden geopolitical supply chain disruptions or overnight regulatory shifts.
The research states emphatically that by 2027, having a human in the loop will no longer just be a best practice guideline.
It will be a strict fiduciary requirement.
Yeah.
Corporate boards will have to legally prove that their automated AI decisions are undergoing rigorous human challenge and oversight.
Which perfectly sets the stage for the new executive archetype at the center of this research. The leaders who can actually manage this chaotic intersection of code, concrete, and corporate governance. Enter the quantum landlord.
The quantum landlord, typically holding a title like Chief Digital Transformation Officer or Chief Technology Officer, but operating with a mandate that extends far beyond traditional IT.
The case profiles in the sources provide this incredibly detailed look at the ultimate quantum landlord. They use a composite persona named Alex Alpha Meridian to illustrate the required traits.
They describe this executive as a hybrid species.
They are part Wall Street hedge fund quant and part Silicon Valley systems architect.
Their defining characteristic, according to the profiling data, is their bilingual fluency.
Meaning they speak both languages.
Right. They have to speak the traditional language of the boardroom flawlessly. They understand cap rates, funds from operations, complex debt covenants, and NAV accretion.
But they are equally, if not more, fluent in deep tech.
Managing API orchestration, interpreting live IoT telemetry, and deploying large language model-driven automation across a portfolio.
And because they bridge that massive gap between traditional finance and deep tech, they possess a capability that makes modern boards absolutely love them.
In a high-interest rate environment where traditional growth is stalled, they are often the only executives sitting in the boardroom not asking for hundreds of millions in new capital to generate a return.
They literally use sophisticated code to find money hidden inside the operational inefficiencies of the existing portfolio. Here's where it gets really interesting. We have to talk about the primary tool they use to do this, the living digital twin.
This is a massive leap forward. The quantum landlord entirely abandons the static, outdated spreadsheet.
The traditional rent roll that looks backward at what happened last month.
Instead, they operate a living digital twin. This is a dynamic, real-time 3D model of the entire physical portfolio.
It tracks highly granular data.
Heat maps of tenant behavioral movement, minute-by-minute utility surges, and even predictive sub-market sentiment.
The specific example the reports outline is brilliant. Imagine a quantum landlord sitting in a tense board meeting. Instead of guessing about future vacancy rates or arguing over abstract marketing budgets, they run a live, data-backed simulation right there in the room.
They can empirically show the board that by proactively increasing the lobby, cooling across 5 specific buildings by exactly 2 degrees,
And simultaneously deploying an automated renewal bot to negotiate with 12 highly targeted tenants who are mathematically likely to churn.
they will proactively increase the asset's net asset value by 42 basis points by Friday.
It is the ultimate translation of abstract technological upgrades into immediate, highly measurable financial gains.
And the quantum landlord monitors all of this telemetry through a unified, heavily customized dashboard that the industry is starting to call mission control.
Mission control.
It tracks hybrid key performance indicators that completely blur the lines between tech and finance.
The metrics on this dashboard are fascinating because they represent a totally new way of valuing real estate operations. They track synthetic cap rate compression.
Which is a live look at how much they've lowered an asset's risk profile just by making its digital metabolism smarter than the analog building across the street.
They track zero-touch OpEx, which measures the exact percentage of operational tasks being handled entirely by autonomous agents without human intervention.
They literally have a live NAVO meter ticking away.
An efficiency frontier graph showing precisely where the firm is overspending on general and administrative costs.
And even a mood ring metric that uses AI to track the real-time sentiment of institutional analysts covering their public stock.
And within this broader quantum landlord umbrella, Rutherford's research identifies some highly specialized sub-archetypes based on how different executives apply this massive stream of data.
For instance, there is a profile they call the churn whisperer.
The churn whisperer.
This leader deploys AI sentiment analysis on something as mundane as routine maintenance request emails to predict tenant flight risks long before a tenant even consciously decides they want to move out.
They can read the mounting frustration in the language of a maintenance ticket and intervene before the lease is ever threatened. And then there is the sustainability shaman. This approach turns environmental, social, and governance or ESG initiatives from a begrudging compliance checklist into direct, aggressive P&L optimization.
To this archetype, a carbon-neutral building isn't just a marketing brochure to save the planet.
It's about completely eliminating what they call utility leakage. To them, every kilowatt saved is pure margin added to the bottom line.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this ability to hyper-analyze real-time data at the micro level of a single building completely shifts how these organizations acquire new properties at the macro level.
It changes the whole game.
It introduces a behavioral strategy the sources call the algorithmic arbitrager.
Right, because if your dashboards allow you to clearly see the hidden digital value of a building, you stop competing with everyone else for traditionally good locations.
And you start actively hunting for data mispriced assets.
The reports detail a scenario involving a commercial warehouse. On paper, using traditional underwriting metrics, this warehouse looks terrible.
It has poor current yield, deferred maintenance.
A real dog on paper.
But the algorithmic arbitrager looks at the overlapping data sets and sees that this specific overlooked warehouse is perfectly positioned geographically and technologically to become a critical hub for a newly approved autonomous drone flight corridor.
They acquire the distressed asset for a massive discount, knowing its latent digital alpha will make it incredibly valuable within 24 months.
And this data-driven, dashboard-heavy approach to acquisitions is fundamentally reshaping the entire global market.
The reports provide a fascinating breakdown of the geographic realities unfolding as of early 2026. Let's look at the United States, for example.
You have incredibly strong residential markets, but commercial office vacancies are sitting at a painful 19% in many urban cores.
Now, traditional investors see that 19% as a crisis, but to a quantum landlord armed with a living digital twin, that distress is a massive acquisition opportunity.
They can acquire those assets cheaply, install a digital metabolism, and aggressively narrow those 20 to 25% NAV discounts.
The global variations in how this technology is applied are quite stark. When you look at the data on Canada, those markets are fighting heavy hybrid work headwinds in their urban cores.
So the digital twin technology there is heavily focused on hyper-optimizing energy use for unpredictable, fluctuating daily occupancies.
In Europe, the primary risk driving digital adoption is regulatory retrofits. Firms are using predictive analytics to figure out the most cost-effective ways to upgrade older, historic buildings to meet aggressive, new climate laws without destroying their yields.
And then you look over at Singapore, where they're dealing with exceptionally high construction and labor costs.
The reports show they're relying heavily on their highly mature AI infrastructure to achieve that zero-touch OpEx we talked about.
Using automation to entirely offset those expensive human labor costs.
What this comprehensive geographical data all points to is a massive, impending market convergence and consolidation.
By shifting away from standard, fragmented SaaS software and moving toward unified agentic AI, these forward-thinking firms are consistently securing 10 to 15% in overall operational expenditure savings.
That level of structural OpEx savings gives them an incredible competitive advantage when bidding against legacy firms.
It absolutely does. And as a result, the analysis points to structural tailwinds pushing massive growth and consolidation in very specific asset categories.
Like that.
We're seeing data centers, tech-enabled residential properties, and highly automated self-storage currently trading at 6 to 6.5% implied caps.
This data suggests a rapid convergence with private markets.
Because these digital dashboards give quantum landlords such incredible visibility into operational efficiencies, their firms can aggressively consolidate across these specific geographies and asset classes.
They are buying up the digital brownfields and upgrading them to capture that digital alpha at scale. So if you are a board member, a fund manager, or real estate executive listening to this, you're looking at these 10 to 15% operational savings, and you're thinking, I need to hire one of these quantum landlords immediately.
Naturally.
But here is the massive catch the white papers highlight. You cannot just read a standard two-page resume to find someone who is legitimately part Wall Street hedge fund quant and part Silicon Valley systems architect. So how do you actually identify and hire a leader capable of executing this?
This raises an important question, and it is a structural problem that traditional HR departments and standard executive search firms simply cannot solve.
Relying on gut intuition, interview charm, or a standard CV leaves a firm's strategic growth exposed to an unacceptable level of operational risk.
Which brings us to the predictive talent science methodology detailed in the reports, developed by Rutherford International.
The white papers dedicate a significant portion of their analysis to outlining a proprietary methodology called the Rutherford Intel Assessment.
It is an incredibly deep analytical tool built on years of personality DNA research. Instead of just looking at past job titles, it evaluates 85 distinct behavioral and psychological traits.
By mapping a candidate's underlying cognitive architecture, the research claims it can forecast on-the-job performance in these complex digital roles, with over 85% predictive accuracy.
Achieving 85% predictive accuracy for a C-suite executive hire is a remarkably high benchmark.
And the way the methodology categorizes people is deeply analytical. It clusters assessment responses into 12 core personality types, as well as complex, overlapping hybrids.
The entire goal is to mathematically match a leader's specific cognitive architecture to the distinct, highly technical needs of the role, which effectively mitigates that dangerous organizational model bias we discussed earlier.
It is entirely about aligning psychological traits with business objectives. Let's look at how the reports map these DNA profiles for specific roles.
For the Chief Digital Transformation Officer, the executive tasked with being the ultimate architect of the firm's new digital metabolism, the assessment specifically looks for a profile identified as a holistic and inclusive hybrid.
Let's break that down, because those sound like standard corporate buzzwords. But the reports apply very specific behavioral metrics to them. What does a holistic and inclusive hybrid actually look like in practice?
According to the data, the holistic trait means they are a visionary, intuitive thinker who naturally sees broad patterns and the big picture interconnectedness of complex systems.
They don't get bogged down in the minutiae of a single line of code.
Right. They see how the entire portfolio functions as an ecosystem. However, the analysis notes that if an executive were only holistic, they might push technological change so fast that they completely alienate the legacy property management teams.
That makes sense.
That is why they must simultaneously index high on the inclusive trait. This behavioral marker means they naturally foster collaboration, actively build trust, and are skilled at bridging diverse viewpoints.
They can inspire massive technological change while carefully managing the natural, inevitable resistance from the traditional real estate veterans on the ground.
It's the exact psychological blend required for a change agent. And the research contrasts this so well with how they map the ideal profile for the chief financial officer.
The modern CFO in this digital environment is mapped as an analytic and results-driven hybrid.
They desperately need that logical, highly skeptical analytic trait to objectively protect the financial integrity of the firm from overhyped tech promises.
Combined with a relentless, results-driven focus on concrete outcomes to ensure the digital investments actually yield that 150 basis point cap rate compression.
The assessment methodology even actively accounts for that critical human-in-the-loop requirement we talked about regarding AI.
The reports detail how firms use these diverse behavioral profiles to intentionally set up cross-role challenge sessions.
You purposefully put the deeply analytic CFO types in a room to rigorously stress test the AI models and spot those hitting black swan risks.
While the holistic CDTO leaders moderate the big picture strategy to ensure the tech is still pushing the firm forward, it engineers productive friction.
And the financial stakes of getting this psychological mapping right are staggering. Rutherford's analysis points out that a single mishire putting the wrong cognitive architecture into a digital role costs upwards of $142,500 just for an entry-level professional.
When you scale that up to the executive, quantum landlord level, that financial damage to the portfolio scales exponentially.
But the inverse is also true. When you get it right, when an organization uses predictive science to accurately match the right personality DNA to the right digital transformation role, the data speaks for itself.
The research shows that top quartile candidate matches consistently deliver 40% higher productivity and drive 25% greater profitability than traditionally sourced executive candidates.
48% higher productivity. In a market struggling with high interest rates and stagnant growth, that metric alone is the difference between a real estate company that successfully captures digital alpha and a company that slowly decays into an uninsurable digital brownfield.
So let's take a breath and look at the incredibly dense journey we've taken through these white papers today. We started with the macro reality. Traditional real estate investment trusts are facing multi-decade 20 to 25% net asset value discounts.
The old playbook of simply throwing cheap capital at the problem is dead.
Instead, the only viable solution is building a robust, secure digital metabolism into the physical assets to capture digital alpha.
Which, as the data proved, fundamentally lowers operational risk through cyber hardening, compresses cap rates by up to 200 basis points, and secures massive premium exit multiples.
Exactly. But to execute this technological leap, the reports argue you need a fundamentally reimagined organizational structure led by the quantum landlord.
These are the bilingual executives who utilize living digital twins, AI-driven renewal bots, and unified mission control dashboards.
To literally locate hidden money in existing portfolios without spending a dime of new capital. And finally, the research concludes that you can only find these hybrid leaders by entirely abandoning traditional resumes and utilizing predictive talent science to evaluate behavioral DNA. So, what does this all mean for you?
The Rutherford reports conclude with a pretty stark warning for the industry.
They argue that in a volatile, increasingly cyber-dependent market, you absolutely must assess the cohesion and adaptability of your own organization's talent stack right now.
To secure your enterprise's operational future, the white papers strongly recommend reaching out to Forbes Rutherford at Rutherford International.
You can email their research team directly at research@rutherfordinternational.com or find them on LinkedIn and X at the handle @RutherfordInternational. They offer a complimentary consultation to audit your current team's cognitive architecture and help you build a resilient, pre-certified talent pipeline before your firm gets left behind.
And as we close out this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final lingering question to ponder from the margins of this research. We've talked extensively today about how these living digital twins and highly advanced AI agents can flawlessly predict utility surges, dynamically optimize cap rates, and model sentiment based on massive oceans of historical data. But what happens when this pristine operating system of the built environment encounters the one variable it can never perfectly code? I am talking about a deeply irrational, entirely unpredictable human tenant who acts completely outside the 85% predictive accuracy of any logical model. Ultimately, can digital alpha truly account for human chaos?
A fascinating and slightly terrifying question to leave us on. Until next time, keep diving deep.